Hey, what's up everyone? My name's Chris Winter, and in this video, I'm going to try and answer 50 questions about the brand new Canon 77D. Now, I know that when you're buying a new DSLR, you'll probably have lots of things that you want to know. So I asked my followers on Instagram what they wanted to know, so hopefully these can answer your questions as well. By the way guys, in case you don't have a Canon 77D, I'm actually giving one away, or a Nikon D5600, so if you want to enter, all you need to do is hit that subscribe button. And guys, also if you haven't seen it yet, definitely make sure to check out my brand new list, the best cameras for under $1,000. Now the Canon 77D makes it, but it doesn't come in at number one. So if you do want to check that out, that link will be in the description box below under this video and you can take a look. But anyway, let's answer questions about the Canon 77D. So this video might be a little bit longer than my normal videos, but go grab a coffee or something because I've got a lot of questions right here. So the first question asks, does it focus well in movie mode? Absolutely, the Canon 77D has that new dual pixel autofocus system and it works really, really well. I've been very, very impressed with it. Now I've used the Canon 70D and 80D a lot and they've both got that dual pixel autofocus, and I'm happy to say that the Canon 77D's got the exact same kind of focus motor in there and it works really well, so you'll be impressed. Does it have a dedicated button for time-lapse? No, we don't have a dedicated button for time-lapse. Of course, you could just set it to record and do a video time-lapse like that and just speed it up in post. But one good thing that the Canon 77D does have is inbuilt time-lapses in the menu system. So you pretty much just go into the menu system and then set up the time-lapse from there instead of having to use an intervalometer, which is a nice thing to have. Next up, someone's saying, will you make a comparison to the 80D? Absolutely. I think that that's probably the biggest competitor for the Canon 77D, especially from Canon, and I'm going to be making that in the next few days. Got a question saying, which is the perfect lens for the Canon 77D and why? Well, that's a really tricky one to answer because essentially you need to know exactly what you're going to be using it for. Are you going to be doing photography? Are you going to be doing cinematography? Are you going to be shooting sports or wildlife? Or are you going to be shooting portraits? There's not really one do-it-all lens. If there was, I think everyone would want to buy it. One of my favorite kind of do-it-all lenses though is the Canon 18 to 135mm STM. It's got a really wide range. You go really wide at 18, but can also zoom in at 135, and it's not too expensive either. It's also got that STM motor as well, which works really well in video mode. But I did make a video on it, best lenses for the Canon 77D, so you can check that out on my channel, and I go through, I think, 5 or 6 different lenses that would work well with that DSLR. How's the battery life when compared to the 70D? Well, that's a good question, and I guess you also mean the Canon 80D because they're quite similar. Now, the Canon 77D uses these batteries here. These are the LPE17 batteries, which are found in a lot of other like Rebel kind of cameras. A lot smaller. The 70D and 80D use these batteries right here, the LPE6 batteries, which I've used for about 4 or 5 years, and these are fantastic. You'll also find these in Canon 7D and things like that as well. So battery life is definitely better on the Canon 70D, but 77D is not too bad, just not as good. Got a question saying, is it good for an intermediate photographer like myself? Yeah, absolutely. To me, the Canon 77D is really in that kind of intermediate range. It's not a full pro camera like you're going to be getting with a 7D Mark II or a 5D Mark IV, but it's also definitely a step above from cameras like the Canon T6 or 1300D. You've got that great autofocus system. The body is a little bit bigger. Sure, it's not a huge body, but it's definitely got a bit of bigger grip, so it's going to be working a little bit better with larger lenses. I think it's perfect for an intermediate. How does the autofocus compare to other cameras around this price point? The autofocus is fantastic, especially in video mode. In stills it works really well and you're probably not going to have any problems unless you really need that absolute fastest autofocus you're going to be finding. Around this price point, your competitor is going to be something like the Nikon D5600, the Sony A6300, and maybe even a used Canon 7D. The 7D is probably going to be a little bit better with autofocus, especially in stills. The D5600, about the same, and the A6300 is a very good autofocusing camera as well. In terms of video mode, the 77D beats them all. A6300 was pretty good. This one still has the smoother and more cinematic focus, so yeah. Is it weatherproof? No, the Canon 77D isn't weatherproof like you would see on the more pro bodies like the 7D Mark II, but it is pretty good at being weather sealed. I don't think you're going to have any problems if you get caught out in the rain. Of course, you don't want to dunk these DSLRs in water. They probably wouldn't survive. And it's also going to come down to what lens you use on the front. This here is a 18 to 55mm kit lens. This is definitely not weatherproof. So if you do have a nice weather sealed lens and then you use your Canon 77D, you're probably not going to have any problems. Is the Canon 77D a good backup to my 80D? 100%. I've actually been thinking about getting a 77D, another one in, so I can use it here in the studio. Now, I generally shoot with a Canon 70D. I'm shooting with it right now, but it's always good to have a backup DSLR body. I was always thinking about getting a Canon T6i when that came out, or a Canon T6S. But something that held me back was that dual pixel autofocus wasn't in that body. Last year we had the hybrid autofocus, which worked okay in video mode, but having the dual pixel, fantastic now. Very similar to your 80D, just a little bit of a baby brother. You're only going to be really missing that headphone jack. So yeah, definitely a good backup to the 80D. How much bokeh effect is created using the kit lens on the camera? It's going to depend on which kit lens you get with the Canon 77D. This 18 to 55mm lens isn't going to get much bokeh. It's not exactly what it's designed for. If you do use the 18 to 135 USM, which comes as a kit as well with this, you might be able to get a little bit more on the longer end of that lens. But generally, if you want to get some nice bokeh, get a Nifty 50, a 50mm f1.8, and that's going to be a whole lot better. Should I get the 70D or 77D? Which is better? Please tell. Probably the best way for me to tell you that is go and watch my video I just released a few days ago, Canon 77D versus the 70D. Overall, they're both very similar cameras. The 77D is going to be a bit better if you want a lighter DSLR and a little bit of newer software. The 70D is going to be better if you want better battery life and a more solidly built camera. If I bought this camera, would I need to worry about buying another one in the future, or would it be pretty much up to date? Yeah, absolutely. I think the Canon 77D is probably at that level right now where you probably wouldn't need to buy another DSLR body for a couple of years. Now, generally I say that it's better to invest your money in lenses because they're going to last a whole lot longer. Some lenses can last you 10 or 20 years. A body is something that you would normally have to, update every couple of years, but if you treat it pretty well, I think it's going to be all right. The only big thing is going to be 4K video when Canon finally put that into their DSLRs. I don't even know if that's going to happen next year. If it does, that might be one reason why you want to upgrade. But other than that, if you're just shooting stills, look after it, you're going to have no problems for the next few years. Do you think that this camera would be better than the T7i for vlogging? There's not going to be a huge difference. Now I've got the Canon 77D right here, and if we actually are talking about daily vlogging, having the camera right here is not too bad. It's not as heavy as something like the Canon 80D. T7i, got it here as well. Of course, you can flip out the screen as well. There's not much of a difference. T7i is slightly lighter, and other than that, there really isn't that much of a difference. Apart from the 77D having that in-body stabilization, either of those cameras will be fine. Why is the Canon 80D still a better camera than the 77D? That's a good question, and I don't exactly know if it's that much better. I'm still to do my big comparison between those two cameras, but the main reason for me with the Canon 80D is that we have the headphone jack. So if you are serious about filming and you're going to be doing plugging in an external microphone, you want to be able to monitor that noise. It's a pity that they didn't include the headphone jack in the Canon 77D. It would have been a fantastic camera then. But really, I think they're very similar, just missing the headphone jack. How does the Canon 77D compare to the G7X or the Sony RX100? Well, I can actually grab my Canon G7X right here. In terms of size, you're going to be noticing quite a big difference. This is the G7X, and then we've got the Canon 77D. You can see to the side, there's quite a big difference. The main difference you're really going to be finding is that you can change your lenses on the Canon 77D. So this is great for vlogging. You've got an inbuilt zoom lens. It works really well. You've got a nice flip screen, but you're kind of limited if you want to have a really fast piece of glass on there, or if you're going to be shooting some sports, you want to have a longer telephoto lens. You'll be able to upgrade a lens on the Canon 77D, throw it on here, and you're going to have a lot more options. So this is better if you want to be taking your photography a lot more seriously, and this is probably better if you want to have a quick camera to vlog with. Does the Canon 77D have an autofocus motor in the body itself, or do you need to buy a lens with an autofocus motor? The Canon 77D does have an autofocus motor built into it. I guess that's the dual pixel autofocus system, but you do need a lens that does have autofocus as well. So you can't use an older manual lens or something like a Rokinon lens which doesn't have autofocus in it. The best lens that you're going to be using if you want to get the best autofocus are these STM lenses or the USM, the newer version USM lenses from Canon. These work really, really well. I am using the 18 to 35mm from Sigma at the moment. It's filming me right now, and that works pretty well with the dual pixel as well. But yeah, the 18 to 55 works really well. STM lenses work great with this. How does it handle higher ISO levels? Works pretty well. It's not the greatest camera for low light, but it works pretty good. Now, it's not going to be as good as a full frame body like the Canon 5D Mark IV. It's got a similar sensor to the 80D, so if you want to check out some of my Canon 80D low light tests, it'll be very similar to that. How would I compare it to the Canon T6i? It's better than the Canon T6i. It's better than Canon T6S. Both of those cameras are quite similar as well. Mainly to do with the dual pixel autofocus though. That's the big upgrade on this Canon 77D. Hybrid autofocus is okay. I've done a lot of tests on that last year, so if you want to watch some of those videos, you can kind of compare it to when I did it with the 70D as well. But yeah, I would probably go for the 77D over the T6i. What are the advantages of having dual pixel autofocus? Well, I seem like I'm talking about it a lot, but it is the big feature on this camera. The big advantage is that you can have reliable autofocus even if you're not behind the camera. So I shoot pretty much everything by myself. I'm in this quite small little studio and I don't have a dedicated guy behind the camera to film me. So having good quality autofocus with face tracking, you can see that even right now, as I move back and forward, even if I move off my spot a little bit, I'm always going to be staying in focus. So it works really well. There's not going to be any hunting, so you're going to be noticing that the things behind me aren't going to be kind of pulsing or anything like that. So just having that autofocus, you can kind of set it and forget it. It's at a level right now where it's really, really good, and it's a great feature to have. What's the key difference between the 77D and T7i? Again, it's going to be that dual pixel autofocus. How does the Nifty 50 work on it? That's a good question. For stills, it's going to work perfectly fine. For autofocus in video, the Nifty 50, you've got a couple of different options. First off, you've got the STM version, which is the newer one, which came out about a year and a half ago. That works really well. The STM motor on it works fantastically. It is a longer focal length, so it's not perfect, but it does work really well. The older Nifty 50, the f1.8 and the Yongnuo version don't work as well in video. They're quite noisy. So yeah, if you do get the Nifty 50, you want to get the STM version, which came out about a year and a half ago. Will I do a video quality test on it again? Yes, absolutely. I'm going to be doing video quality tests with the Canon 77D and the Canon T7i in the next few weeks, so stay tuned for them. Yeah. Do you think the Canon 77D is worth the money? Yeah, I do think it is, especially if you don't have a DSLR already. If you've got something like a Canon T7i, a Canon T6i, it's an interesting question. It's probably not 100% worth upgrading, but if it is your very first camera, I'd definitely be looking at getting a Canon 77D. Probably worth it because it's going to last you a couple of years. All right, we're at the halfway mark. Question number 25. So if you've stayed around, thank you very much. All right, this question says, which is better, the Nikon D5600 or the Canon 77D? They're both similar cameras in terms of features and things like that. The grip on the Nikon D5600 is quite a lot smaller than on the 77D. They've both got nice flippy outy screens. For video, I'd definitely be going for the 77D. If you're going to be doing any kind of video, go the 77D. For stills, the Nikon D5600 is just as good, if not better than the 77D. So I generally say it really does come down to which camera brand you're more used to. If you like shooting on Nikon, shoot Nikon. If you like shooting on Canon, go Canon. Is it good for vlogging? Well, I kind of answered this question before, and I think it is pretty good for vlogging. Now, you've got to understand that this is quite a big camera, especially compared to something like a Canon G7X. I'd choose something like this for vlogging because you can whip it out at any time, carry it in your pocket, and you're going to be good to go. If you want to get better video quality, you could shoot with the Canon 77D. I know people like Casey Neistat shoot with this type of camera. It does get a little bit heavy, not as bad as something like an 80D, but it could work pretty well. I would recommend changing the lens though. Get the 10 to 18mm STM. That works really well for vlogging because it's a lot wider. How well does the Canon 77D perform with action shots compared to other Canons? FPS, so frames per second. The Canon 77D shoots at 6 frames per second. The 70D shoots at 6.7 frames per second or 6.3, one of them, so slightly more. And then you're going to be getting cameras like the 7D Mark II, which shoot at much higher kind of frames per second burst mode. So it's pretty good. There are other lower end cameras which might shoot at 3 frames per second or 5 frames per second. So it's kind of in that mid to higher level range. Okay, so what's the crop sensor on it? I tried the 77D a couple days back and the sensor felt super small compared to a full frame and even a crop sensor. Not exactly sure what you mean. The sensor on it is an APS-C body sensor. You're going to be getting a 1.6 times crop factor, so it's the same as the Canon T6i, Canon T6, 70D, 80D, even the 7D Mark II. Of course, it's going to be smaller than a full frame sensor like on the 5D Mark IV or even the Canon 6D. But yeah, there's no difference in size. It's 1.6 times crop, so it's all right. It's not going to be the best in low light, but it works pretty well. The ISO can go up to 51,200. Is it really usable that high, or is it better to use lower ISOs? Yeah, I wouldn't be shooting at 51,200. It's a crazy high ISO. A lot of that is kind of marketing talk. They like to have those really high numbers in there to say that, you know, you could possibly shoot in that low light, but it's going to be incredibly grainy. With the Canon 77D, I've pretty much been topping it out at about 6,400 for stills, and for video, maybe 3,200, and that's about it. Is it good for taking indoor sports photography? Yeah, it's not bad at all. Like I said before, it's got that 6 frames per second burst mode, which is quite important for sports photography. You've got that 1.6 times crop factor, so you're going to be able to get it zoom in a little bit more than you would be on a full frame body. It works pretty well. If you want to get a better camera, go for something like the Canon 7D Mark II, but not a lot of people can afford that. So yeah, it would work pretty well for indoor sports. How's the new menu, and do you suggest using it? Well, this was interesting because when I heard about the Canon 77D, I thought that it had a new menu as well, but out of the box, it doesn't come with a new menu. It's the same as what we've been using for the last few years. On the other hand though, the Canon T7i has a completely different menu. It looks kind of more childlike and it works okay. You can see right here, it's a bit more of a basic kind of menu on the T7i, but the 77Ds is very similar to the T6i and 70D and things like that. Does it have a built-in time-lapse option? Yes, it does. Like I said before, works really well, it's easy, and it's a nice feature to have. How is the audio quality for videos in the 77D? Should I get an external microphone? Yes, it's always important to get an external microphone with these DSLRs. Built-in audio quality is not very good. None of the DSLRs these days have good built-in audio. The preamps in it are all right, so if you do get an external mic, it's not going to have a lot of hiss or anything like that. But yes, definitely get an external microphone like a lav like I'm using, or even a shotgun mic, and get the audio quality away from the built-in mics. Should I get this or the G7 for both photography and videography? That's a good question, and I think that this is kind of going to be a little bit of a toss-up between which one you favour more. For videography, obviously the Panasonic G7 has 4K, and that's a pretty big selling point for a lot of people. On the other hand, the Canon 77D shoots in 1080p, so it's not as good, but it has remarkably better autofocus. So the G7, if you really need to get that nice 4K crisp image, it's a fantastic buy. Know that you're going to be mainly using manual focus though. So if you're happy to have manual focus, go for the G7 for sure. If you want better autofocus and you're happy to have 1080p, go for the Canon 77D. Is it worth it if I upgrade my Canon T6i to a 77D for better photo quality and video production? I kind of touched on this before, and I would say, I'd probably say no. I don't think that you would need to upgrade from a T6i to a 77D. The T6i is a really good camera. If I was going to upgrade to anything, I'd probably go for the 80D from the T6i. If you're anything below the Canon T6i, so say you've got a T5i or you've got a Canon T6 or 1300D or an SL1, for sure go up to the 77D. If you guys have got a T6i or a T6S, you probably don't need to spend the money for a new 77D. Should I buy the 77D over the 80D? This is going to come down to your budget, I think. The 77D is newer. To me, the 80D is still a better camera, and I think they're relatively similar on price. I think the 80D is still a bit more expensive. If you're going to be doing video and you want to have that headphone jack, go for it. If you can save a little bit of money and get the 77D and then put that extra money towards a nice lens, go for the 77D. I have the 1300D, should I upgrade? Yeah, kind of answered this one before. Yes, you should upgrade because the 1300D is a great camera. I've got it at the back there. But yeah, there's a big difference in the 77D and the 1300D. How does it compare to the Sony a6300? Well, you guys probably know that I did a lot of videos on the Sony a6300 last year and found it to be a great camera. It's got really nice 4K video and it's got great autofocus as well. Really good camera for that. Ergonomics aren't great, so holding the actual camera is quite small, and it doesn't have a fully articulating screen. So the screen on the Sony a6300 can only flip up. Which one would I buy? I'd probably get the 77D these days, because you could also get the Sony a6500, which is a better camera again. Does the price reflect what you get with the camera? Yeah, I think it does. I think it's a pretty reasonable price for the camera. It would be nice if we had 4K video in it, and then it would be a great camera, but I think that would kill their top market because it's pretty much everything you can ask for apart from being a full frame body. So I think it's pretty good. I would like to see it with 4K though. What's the point of the 77D in Canon's range when the 800D is so competitive and the 80D is better than the 77D? I think it's probably just a way for them to have an extra camera that people can buy. You know, it's as simple as that. The 800D is very, very similar. Sorry guys, the 800D is the T7i outside of America. The 800D is a fantastic camera and it's very similar to the 77D. It's lacking a top LCD screen. That's pretty much it. It's just, I guess it's just having a camera that's slightly cheaper than the 80D. A lot of people might not be able to afford that extra $100 or whatever it is. And then they might want to have that top LCD screen, which they're not going to be able to get on the T7i. But honestly, I think it's just Canon's way of saying, we can make an extra camera. This gives you an extra option. Why not? Can the 77D be controlled by the Canon app? Does Canon 77D support the Canon app sync? Yes, it can be controlled by the Canon app, and it's called the Canon Camera Connect app. I've made a video on it, and it should be up on my channel by now. And that shows you how to connect it. It takes about 2 minutes. It's really works really well. All right, we've got 8 questions left, and that's good because my voice is starting to go. What's the biggest problem with the 77D? There aren't that many problems with it, actually. I find it pretty good. Battery life could be a little bit better, and it doesn't have a headphone jack. Is it a good camera for the money? I think I answered this one kind of before, and yeah, I would say it would be. Does it film in 1080p at 60 frames per second? Yes, it does. And it took Canon ages to include this in their cameras, and it works pretty well. Now, the quality's not as good as it could be, I would say, but it's not too bad, and it's nice to have that slow motion ability. All right, 5 more questions. What would you say the Nikon equivalent is to the 77D? Kind of in between the Nikon D5600 and the D7200. So you got the same flip out screen on the D5600 and kind of the features as the D7200. Of course, you could also say it's similar to the Nikon D7500, which just came out as well, or just got announced as well. So yeah, probably the D7500 is the closest one. Should I get the 70D, 80D, or 77D used? Well, I think you're going to have a hard time finding the 77D used. But if you are talking about buying them all used, I would probably get the 80D if you can. How fast can you change the settings by using the top LCD screen? Yeah, pretty fast. I mean, there's no real difference between using the top LCD screen or the rear LCD screen. You just can see it without actually looking at the back. You still change it using the same dials on the back and on the top. How does the video quality compare to higher end DSLRs like the Canon 5D Mark IV? It's not as good. The Canon 5D Mark IV shoots in 4K. But you're going to be getting very similar color science, so the colors are going to look very natural. One side note is that the Canon 77D's video files are really easy to edit. So if you've got a slower computer, those 1080p files are a lot easier to edit than the 4K files on the Canon 5D. Is the Canon 77D good for YouTube? Absolutely. I think it's pretty much the perfect camera for YouTube, apart from having that 4K video, especially if you're going to be doing videos like I do, where you can sit down. Having that flip screen's awesome. You can see yourself. You've got great face tracking, so don't have to worry about that. Like I said before, it's really easy to edit. Yeah, it's a fantastic camera. How good is the 5-axis image stabilization? It's pretty good. It's not perfect because it is a digital image stabilization, but overall I found it to work pretty well. You do get a bit of a crop on the image though, unfortunately, so you do lose a little bit of quality, but it's not too bad. And last question, if you've made it this far, you're a legend. Have I enjoyed using it? Well, yeah, I have. The Canon 77D's been fantastic. So is the T7i. I really like these cameras at this price point. You know, they're not super expensive, but you're getting a lot of features. And for most people, 95% of people, this is going to be more than enough camera for a lot of years to come. So yeah, fantastic camera. So there you go, guys. 50 questions answered on the Canon 77D. It's probably the longest video I've ever made on my channel, but I thought it'd be a good idea to do because I just know that everyone, when they buy a new DSLR, it's a big investment and they want to kind of get every question answered as possible. And you know, you can't always get it on a forum or even go into a camera store these days. So hopefully I helped you a little bit and even answered one of your questions. I'll be really happy with that. Now, if you guys did get this far, I'm sure you're already subscribed, but if you haven't subscribed, definitely make sure to go into the draw to win a Canon 77D or a Nikon D5600. And also check out my top list of the best cameras for under $1,000. I'm really tired now. That's a lot of talking. That link is in the description box below under this video. You can take a look. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I'm actually going to go have a rest now. I'll see you next time. Bye.